bring in Congressman Jim Jordan of Ohio. He's a founding member and chairman, former chairman of the House Freedom Caucus. Good to have you, Congressman. So the trial, the hearing is going to happen this evening. Yeah. The decision could very well be split, right? That part of the executive order is found to need to be reframed or redone, and part will stand. What will be your reaction to any decision that comes out?
Well, we'll just have to wait and see. We have this wonderful system where we have checks and balances in a judiciary branch who can decide these things. I happen to think the executive order is within the president's prerogative and rights and consistent with the law. You know, the common sense is we want to, as the most welcoming country on the planet, we want to welcome refugees here who truly need safety. We want to welcome them here, but we want to do it in a safe way. And we can't forget that ISIS has said they are trying to actively exploit our refugee program. And so we want to make sure we can thoroughly check people out, thoroughly vet people before they get here.
Right.
That's all the executive order says. It's consistent with what President Obama did before. I think it makes sense, and I hope that the court will decide that it's okay to move forward with the pause that President Trump has put in place.
Well, I think part of your legal problem is that it's not consistent with what was done before, right? I mean, the President Obama never stopped travel from any of those places. He didn't, you know, there was no ban in effect. But well, hold on. My question goes to this context, which is you say you want to be welcoming and inviting. One of the reasons you didn't get the emergency stoppage that the Department of Justice asked for was because you couldn't show any imminent threat to national security from refugees in this country. And therefore, there was no reason to allow it to stay in place until you do have a show of proof.
Well, I would say what ISIS has said. They've said they're actively trying to exploit this program to get bad people in this country who will do us harm.
But that's not that doesn't give you the threshold of an imminent threat. Just look at your stats. Look what has happened here.
Terrorists saying they're trying to exploit a program to harm us, that's not a threat. I think that's a real threat. And remember,
but an imminent threat shows proof of that infiltration, shows actual threat to you, actionable intelligence. You have none of that.
Chris, remember that this is consistent with legislation that passed the House of Representatives a little over a year ago that 47 Democrats supported. The president said he would veto it, but 47 Democrats said after the terrorist attack in Paris and the terrorist attack in San Bernardino that this kind of policy made sense, especially in light of what ISIS has said, that they're actively trying to exploit the program. So this is entirely consistent with what we've done before, entirely, I think, consistent with the law. And let's hope that today the three-judge panel will rule in favor of what the president put in place.
Why don't you do what you promised during this campaign, which was extreme vetting? Okay, that's what the president promised. You don't have anything but that slogan right now. Why don't you do what the Obama administration did? You had those Iraqis slip through in 2000, what was it, 8, 9. They then looked at the vetting procedures, had to come up with new ways to catch people who slipped through the way they did. They then inculcated it into the new policy, and those countries were named. Here you're doing it in reverse. You're stopping everything from those places for a limited time, although duration doesn't matter for its constitutionality, but you have no new vetting.
A pause to put in the new vetting to make sure no one who's going to do us harm gets in this country. Exactly consistent with what we said last year in that legislation where we said unless the FBI can say for sure that they know people coming into this country are not part of a terrorist organization, are not going to do us harm, then they shouldn't get in. That's what the legislation said. And again, it wasn't just Republicans who supported it. 47 Democrats supported it in the House of Representatives because it made good common sense. That's the kind of policy I think the president wants. That's the kind of policy I want. And it's the kind of policy I think the American people want, and that's why they voted the way they did last November.
The policy argument has become about how you treat Muslims and how this appears to Muslims and whether it mitigates a threat or it actually advances a threat. And the president, in making this case, now says, hey, you know, the media is part of the problem. They underreport terror attacks that have happened, and they put out a list of 70-some-odd attacks that have happened in the 2 years that they decided to look at, and said we underreport them. Do you agree with that, Congressman?
I'll let you and the White House have that debate. What I believe
no. That's not why you were sent to Washington. This is about truth and taking care of the people, your constituency, and their agenda. This matters. What do you think about it?
No, you're right, it matters, and that's why I support the president's executive order, because, again, I think it's consistent with common sense. I think it's consistent with what passed the House of Representatives when 47 Democrats supported that legislation.
I hear you on that. Do you think the president is right to say that the media is part of the problem because we underreport terror attacks? And I'll give you a hint. that is demonstrably false. I'm holding a ledger in front of me right now of those attacks, and none of them have less than 100 media hits, even in the remotest place with
Chris,
no injuries.
I'll take your word for it that you did an underreport, that you actually reported some of those. But I do think, does the media have a bias?
You're looking for.
Does the media have a bias, and is the media out to make sure that they can undermine some of the things that the president's doing? I think that's pretty clear. But what I do understand about this executive order is I think it's good common sense. I think it's for the safety of America, for the safety of our country. And I think, again, America is the most welcoming planet, our country on the planet. We want to let people in here who truly deserve it. We just want to check them out before they get here.
You do check them out. You want to say you're welcoming, but you are banning them with no proof of threat.
There's a pause. It's a pause
The
to make
president
sure we're
calls it a
doing
ban.
it right, Chris.
He says, call it a ban. He tweets that it's a ban. It's a ban, Congressman. You're running away from the word
90-day
because
pause,
it is
120-day
unpopular.
pause. Well, it may be a short ban, it may be a short pause, but it's for a specified period of time to make sure that people coming into this country are thoroughly checked out.
But what does it tell you that you're not even comfortable
Chris,
saying what it is, Congressman?
I just said
what does that tell you about the policy if you're not even comfortable saying it? You wanted to call it 3 different things before I got you to say ban.
No, I want to call it what it is, checking people out before they get in this country to make sure we keep America safe. Tell me what's wrong with that. Why are you so opposed to making sure that people come into this country, that something 47 Democrats supported,
no reasonable
had
person is
bipartisan
opposed
support?
to
Why are
good
you
checking?
opposed to that?
Because it's a false premise. The premise is they're getting in now and not being checked. Refugees are coming in and they may be ISIS. We see
Chris,
no proof of those. That is xenophobia. That is a scare tactic.
Chris, what's wrong with just checking it all out and double checking, particularly in light of what ISIS has said? What's wrong with that?
Nothing, but we do it now.
Okay, so then why are you
show
opposed
me
to
how
the
you'll
policy?
do it better, and don't just scare me with what might happen when you have no way to solve it. That would be the criticism.
Scare you. Chris, I'm not trying to scare you. All I'm saying is I think it makes sense when a terrorist organization says they're going to exploit a refugee law that we have, that we check it out and make sure that bad people aren't getting into this country. Tell me how that's not common sense, and it's consistent with the powers that the executive branch has for national security reasons to do just what he did. Tell me why that's wrong.
I think no, it's not about wrong. It's certainly not about what I think. I'm saying that the question is, does the executive order do what you're saying it should? And we'll have the courts examine it, and then you come back on and we'll talk about it as policy once we get the legal reckoning. Let me ask you one more thing while I have you here. You saw the interview with the president most recently on Fox. During it, he seemed to have a hard time calling out Vladimir Putin for the morally reprehensible conduct that is often ascribed to him. And instead of taking that on, he decided to create a parallel with the United States. You know what he said. He said, we're so innocent.
Yeah.
How about the things we've done? How do you feel about that?
Look, I'm not going to get into that. I think.
But I don't know how you duck it.
I think
Congressman. How do you duck it? How do you duck it?
I think Vladimir Putin has done some terrible things. I think we all understand that. But I think the president's way of engaging with Russia is the same way Reagan engaged with the former Soviet Union. He said it's okay to engage, but you got to be able to walk away and you got to be able to stand up to them, just like Reagan did in Iceland when they were negotiating certain arms treaties. So I think that's the approach that he should take. I think that's the approach he is taking. What he said about the United States and comparing to Russia, I don't agree with that.
President Reagan.
But I think that engagement makes sense because that's the way President Reagan handled it.
President Reagan said, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down that wall.
Exactly.
Donald Trump just said about Putin, I don't know Putin, have no deals in Russia, and the haters are going crazy. Yet Obama can make a deal with Iran, #1 in terror, no problem. Do you see these two as parallels?
I think the deal with Iran was a bad deal, very bad deal. That's why I opposed it. I think history has shown it's a bad deal when you got the largest state sponsor of terrorism and you're allowing them, even if they follow the deal to get to nuclear weapons. I think that was a terrible deal, and I think everyone understands that.
Can you explain why our president seems determined to shelter Russia and Vladimir Putin from criticism?
I'm not for sheltering Russia. I'm more than willing to criticize Russia and criticize Mr. Putin. But I don't think it's wrong to engage as long as you can criticize when it's appropriate and as long as you can stand up to him, which I think this administration will, in fact, do.
So you have no questions about why our president seems to be sheltering Putin and Russia?
That's your terms. I think what he said.
You don't see it that way?
I don't agree with what he said, but I think it's okay to engage with people around the world as long as you're standing up for American interest.
Okay, so you don't like my characterization, but you don't agree with what he said either.
I didn't
We'll take
like
that
a
as
lot
middle
of your
ground.
characterizations in this interview.
Hey, I'm here to test your positions, Congressman,
Same here,
and you
same
always bring it full effect, and I appreciate that. Thank you,
bet.
sir.
You
I'll
bet.
see you
Thank
soon.
you.
Allison.
He'll never be.